Hello YouTubers, and welcome back! This is Masa here, and I welcome you to a video where I rant and commentate something for Granblue Fantasy again. So, today, I want to talk about a very specific Varuna grid. When you think about Primal Water, you're usually thinking about two grids, right? The first one is the ougi grid, where you use Dragon Balls, Europa Hops, with a Kengo Nita composition. You know, the standard stuff. Usually it's the entry point where people who make Varuna will make an ougi grid. The second one is the crit grid, using about 3 primal crit weapons and a staff team. Now, you don't have to use a staff team, but for the most effective team out there, a staff team is the way to go. Now, the Varuna grid I want to talk about is actually neither of those two. It's the Forgotten Third grid. Indeed. I bet you forgot about that third one, didn't you? Now feast your eyes onto this terrible thingamajig. Ta-da! Does anyone recognize this grid? It's the skill damage cap grid using the Proving Grounds weapon. I forgot the name of the weapon, but hopefully you know what it is. It's these weapons right here, you know, these 3 terrible guns. With these weapons and an Ultima sword here, using a skill damage key cap, the total skill damage cap is increased by, I think, around about 90%. That's not considering that there's other things such as seraphic weapons, summons, EMP rings, and, you know, all that stuff from the characters. So far, I make this sound like this is a grid that's so good, why not use it often? Well, instead, what about I say, why isn't this grid good? And to answer that, there is 2 things that isn't good about this grid. I think there's 2. Maybe there might be more. There's probably more, but I can only think of 2 at the moment. First is that when this grid came out, you can't afford to be using 3 or even 2 of your precious grid slots for skill damage cap. It wasn't possible to cap your auto attack damage and ougi damage, and honestly sometimes you can't even cap your skill damage because your cap, which you've artificially increased, is so darn high, so that's a bit embarrassing. Now, the second is that, the second has to do with racing. If you're not familiar with racing other players in Granblue Fantasy, then essentially you want to cast the necessary skills first, and then just keep attack, reload, and then so on. Pressing a button for a skill is considered slow because of ping and the animation that plays out when you use the skill. For the time it takes for a skill to be used, it's possible for another player to already have finished about 1 turn of attack in their attack and reload process. They will do more damage than just casting a skill, and the only exception to like skill casting is if it automatically procs during your race. So, you know, stuff like Kolulu, how she can automatically activate one of her skills if she's at red HP. Yeah, those kind of stuff. Like, since you're reloading and you've already pressed the attack button, but the skill plays after you press the attack button, you kind of just skip through the whole animation that you were supposed to watch because you just reloaded past everything, and you get to continue on as if there's no penalty whatsoever. So that's the only exception of skill being used where it's actually, you know, part of a racing strat. It's how Hades do so well in Bahamut HL racing right now. Anyways, I digress. Spamming skills isn't good for racing if you have to click on the skills and watch the animation. Going back to this skill cap grid, I'm hoping to fix the first problem that I addressed, which is not capping your auto, ougi, and skill damage. Now, for those that have been paying attention, I've mixed some grand crit weapons into grid. This one here, 1, 2, and 3. I'm trying to highlight it. I'm not sure if it's showing on the recording, but hopefully it's the first row of the 3 weapons on top of my grid. Yeah. So those crit weapons weren't out when these proving ground guns first came out. So yeah, back then it was pretty much, well, you can't really cap unless if you're using like Durandals or if you manage to crit based on the old system of Primal. So yeah, I've tested this grid out, so this isn't exactly my first impression, but I will be testing this out on Twin Elements to show you just what this can do. So I'll see you there. Alright, so I guess that my guest summon will be Varuna, so I'll be using dual Varunas in this one. Let's get started. So first things first, it's always good practice to use your buffs first. Your buffs won't expire, and yeah, if you use your debuffs first, then cast all your buffs, then essentially that means that you're wasting your debuffers timers, because as soon as you cast them and they hit the boss, the 3 minutes, it's usually 3 minutes, start ticking down. So it's not fair if you just have to cast your buff afterwards. You're basically just wasting time for your debuffs. So let's use Miserable Mist first, and use Nighthound's Judicious Shot. Okay, that hit almost about 1 million damage. Next, let's cast Lancelot's first skill. We're already hitting 1.7 million. 1.6. And another 1.6 million, which is actually pretty high for skills. Sandalphon can hit for 2.1. Oof. And a nice 2.5 million. Alright, let's cast Varuna. That's actually Varuna. I put a skin on top of her. That hit for around about 2.2 million. Catalina's first skill can hit just about 2.6 million, just shy of it. Alright. So basically, without even pressing my first attack yet, I've already dealt about 14% of Twin Elements HP, just from skill damage alone. That's quite a lot. It does look like my skill, my auto attack damage is hitting cap, so that's a good thing already. That was the Princess Long G summon there. So far, it's going pretty well. I'm going to use the Gabriel summon here, because Twin Elements is about to switch her element, and once she changes to water, I actually can't use Gabriel's summon to debuff the boss anymore, because that is only effective against fire enemies. Alright. And oh, I did not expect that to hit 50%. Oh, that's unfortunate. Fun thing to note is that skill damage cap also increases some of your summons damage cap as well. So the ones that do hit a lot of damage, such as the Arcarum summons, or even the Primal Calls when they're at full limit break, do get that extra damage. So let's say I use the Moon right here. We'll see how much damage it does. 2 million damage. Normally it won't hit that high if you don't have that skill damage cap, so yeah, just fun thing to note. Oh, look at all that. Yeah, just spamming skill damage. It's actually pretty fun just seeing your skill damage hit so much numbers. Well, it won't be able to like race against other water grids. It's a fun grid. If you can build it, I definitely recommend that you give it a try. You'll be surprised. Just look at that. just casually hitting like millions from your skill damage. All good stuff. There we go, she goes back to fire. And I believe this will be it after I press the attack button, so yes, that'll be it. And that basically wraps the video that I want to showcase for the skill damage grid for Varuna. You can also make this for Leviathan as well, it just won't be as effective because right now Leviathan Magna 2 is really dominant for the ougi using Europa Harps, and there really isn't any way to just give that additional damage for anything that's not ougiing. So yeah, if you can try it out, by all means give it a go. I really highly recommend it. It's pretty much just fun stuff. If you want to try something new, that is. Maybe you don't have to go for 3 guns, you can just go for 2 guns, and you can put like a Zhuanwu mace here with this the damage cap option. The Opus weapon that I'm using here is ultra limit break, so this is padding my damage quite a lot, like along with all these crit weapons. But yeah, give it a go. you'll surprise yourself just by how much damage that comes out purely by skill alone. Well, I say skill, it's skill damage alone. Anyways, that will be it. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time for whatever I want to showcase, I guess. I usually try to make something interesting to watch. So yeah, till then, next time, I'll see you later.